said, why am I an idiot? He said, let me tell you what that was about. We, the Rockefellers, funded that. We funded Women's Lib, you know? And we're the ones who got all over the newspapers and television, the Rockefeller Foundation. He says, and you want to know why? He says, there were two primary reasons. And one reason was we couldn't tax half the population before Women's Lib. And the second reason was, now we get the kids in school at an early age. We can indoctrinate the kids how to think. It breaks up their family. The kids start looking at the state as the family, as the school, as the officials, as their family, not as the parents teaching them.
Did you know that Gloria Steinem, in one of her own books, now admits the CIA funded Miss Magazine?
No, I had no idea about that. No, I never heard that.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea, too.
To say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization.
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group. And I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who...
In the late 70s, there was a book by an unknown black female author named Michelle Wallace that was heavily promoted by white society called Black Macho. This book was the beginning of the white-funded black male-bashing black gender war wave that took off in the 80s. The main person pushing this book was a CIA-affiliated white feminist named Gloria Steinem.
So she kind of really objectified and dehumanized black men in a particular way, but it was a way that was popular, that people gravitated toward it. And I often say from that to Oprah, right? Oprah becomes a spigot, so to speak, a faucet that opens that up, because she introduces these fairly obscure black feminist talking points to the mainstream. And then from there, it's being digested. So now you have women who will not call themselves feminists, who've never read a feminist book, but have feminist talking points, because they're coming out of that mainstream culture that really starts with Indashake and Williams and filters through Oprah. And so that dynamic creates this snowball of black feminism that we're still seeing, that's rooted in what we call an anti-black misandry, a hatred really of black men.
Gloria Steinem worked for the CIA while she was in college. She was recruited in college, and she was outed by a feminist group called Red Stockings. Red Stockings blew the lid off of that in the Village Voice.
In the late 70s, there was a book by an unknown black female author named Michelle Wallace that was heavily promoted by white society called Black Macho. This book was the beginning of the white-funded black male-bashing.
Gloria, at the festival, you worked for the Independent Research Service.
That's right.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea, too. I was then told by foundations and professors and friends that I should not do this, that I would get in trouble with the House Un-American Activities Committee, the American Legion, all of those 50s people. And I became convinced that it was impossible. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA.
Well, I mean, did you feel that you really tried? I mean, did you go around to all of the wealthy private foundations, wealthy, private people, and explain your point of view, and explain why you felt it was important that the United States be represented in these things in a certain way. What did they tell you?
They told me that, well, the Ford Foundation, for instance, told me that they thought we were too liberal and too controversial, and that we would endanger their cultural programs in Austria. And the first festival was being held in Vienna. It was not encouraging at all. And the private individuals to whom I went often had particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
What do you mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group, and I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who characterized the Kennedy administration, for instance.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962. You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had once been, that I had for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent, I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does
the Superwoman. On the cover meant the satanic child abuse hysteria as a way to help cover up the CIA's mind control experiments on human beings. In 1978, Gloria Steinem put a book called Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman on the cover of Ms. Magazine. The book was written by a black feminist and activist named Michelle Wallace, who came out of nowhere. Wallace was in her early 20s at the time, yet she was being touted as the leader of black feminism. In the book, Wallace called abolitionists like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth ugly and stupid for supporting black men. She called black revolutionaries chauvinist macho pigs and advised black women to go it alone. Gloria Steinem said that Wallace's book would define the future of black relationships, and she pushed hard to make sure the book received massive publicity. Gloria Steinem's work triggered a flood of hate black men books and films that continues to this day. Needless to say, some were quite suspicious of Ms. Magazine and Gloria Steinem. Why was Steinem sticking her nose into the affairs of the black community? So people started doing some research on Steinem. When it came out that Gloria Steinem was probably the ghostwriter of the book with Michelle Wallace's name on it, Wallace had a nervous breakdown and went into hiding for 2 years.